My task for now is to wrap up and give the highlights of what we heard. I'm not sure that is an easy task, given the diverse stories that we heard and the richness of what Joe gave us, but I will have a go. Obviously, we live in a very, very challenging world, but those challenges can also be turned to opportunities. Just to start my wrap-up, I would like to share a challenge that I faced this morning as I parked my car around the block to come to the event. As I was walking back, I saw two homeless people engaged in a very, very toxic conflict. And there I was, all dressed up, going to a peace workshop. From that moment until I entered the room, my mind was buzzing with what is my responsibility as a citizen, as a human being, as a Rotarian. But this is why what we heard today from Joe is extremely important and we should take cognizance of. So to wrap up and to simply highlight some of what we heard today, Joe presented us with the concept of early warning systems, that they are not new, that a number of them have been set up. But he also underscored the fact that the early response systems, they really lag behind. And that is where a lot of work needs to be done. He also stressed that early warning systems and responses are not simply the task of governments, of high-level institutions, but they are also the task of civil society. And that effective approaches have to be multi-level and cooperative. He described Rotary as civic glue, which I think is extremely significant for the task at hand to promote peace, because that civic glue can create the bridges, the connections, the associations, the partnerships to move forward in the interest of peace. He also mentioned the word audacity, which I think is extremely important. I tend to relate the word audacity to the word hope, because when you work in hope, you attempt to do what is over the horizon. You attempt to envision what is over the horizon. And that is what often gets us out of the circumstances that at the time may appear impossible to overcome. Rotary has extraordinary capacity, and the Rotarian Action Group for Peace, as Joe very well said, attempts to amplify this. We have the capacity to work horizontally as well as vertically. He also stressed the importance of cyberspace as being really a new frontier that can help promote peace. I found this quite fascinating because if we look at the history of technology over the last 100 years, we are struck by the fact that technology has been hugely invested in violence and warfare, and yet so little of it has been invested in the interest of peace. So Joe's words, I think, resonate very, very true and very, very challenging. He also mentioned conflict situations and how important it is for the moderates within conflict situations to engage the extremists on their own side as a starting point to engage in dialogue and constructive engagement that would lead to peace. He mentioned Rotarians as mediators because of the advantage that the organization gives them, and the need to establish an international secretariat and to engage in risk assessments. He noted that we need also to deploy experts that can help amplify peace-building capacity within Rotary and in the areas that Rotary is involved in. We need to train and support Rotarians in the task of peace. And in many ways, this is what the Rotary Action Group for Peace is engaged in doing. He also stressed the importance of dialogue. Dialogue is really a key component to resolving conflicts non-violently. And that engagement always assumes a respect for the other, even the extremists, because the extremists often have legitimate grievances that need to be heeded. He also mentioned that along these paths, the Rotarian Action Group for Peace can learn to engage the powers, was the word. A very important challenge. He also emphasized that we should not shy away from being political, and that we should distinguish being political from being partisan. There is no way to engage in peace building without touching politics. It is really impossible. But the key is to remain non-partisan. He also stressed the importance of seeking partnerships, because the business of peace is nothing that any organization, human being, or group can do on their own. After all, peace and peace building is about relationship building. He mentioned the example of Rotary itself having conflict within it when he mentioned the district in the Middle East involving Palestinians and Israelis. I have to say that I shared my part of that kind of conflict in Cyprus when we discovered that the Greek clubs were not talking with the Turkish clubs in the island. And if I may share a little bit more, in 2005, when I visited Cyprus with my class, Jubitz came along with me, and we visited the Rotarians on the two sides. And when we came back and informed Rotary International, they immediately sent a high-level Rotarian to the region who essentially negotiated a conciliatory beginning between the Greek and the Turkish Rotarians, which put them on a more constructive path. So even within Rotary, Joe reminds us, there is a lot of peace building to be done and to be undertaken. And then we had the test cases, which I think exemplify both the capacity to build peace, but also the diversity in doing so. The Klamath water right, I think, is exemplary of what Rotarians can do, and it's really a model to be emulated. The Rotary Peace Fellows we saw in Uganda, it gives us the potential that peace fellows who graduate from the Rotary Peace Centers can engage in, and how they can mobilize communities through the support of Rotary and work cooperatively with other organizations as well. And finally, the early warning system in Sri Lanka that Joe elaborated on gives us, again, more insight into how conflict prevention and nonviolence can be used to really liberate the capacity of the community, as he said. In concluding, I think it's important to reflect a little bit on the 4 simple directives that are really at the heart of Rotary culture, because I think in everything that we heard today, they resonate. And these are the 4, and this is the 4-way test that Rotarians should know. And I would like to simply recite them here, refer to them, because they are directives that I think converge with a lot of what we heard today. And they are posed in the form of questions as to how one moves forward. The first one is it the truth? The second one is it fair to all concerned? The third one, will it build relationships and friendship? And finally, will it benefit all concerned? If the answer to our engagements, to our culture, to our behavior, to our actions, to these questions, it's a yes, that is a very good sign that we are on the right path, building justice and peace in the world. Thank you.